Can we just have a moment to appreciate that 15-minute long final fight sequence that closed off Season 6 Part 2? With the Seikai Taikai competition being the main focus of Cobra Kai Season 6 Part 2, these 5 episodes saw the return of some characters that we thought were gone for good, Division being at the heart of every character at Miyagi-Do, and the events that occurred with Mr. Miyagi's hidden past making an appearance in the present day. But with Death reaching the competition, what does that mean moving forward? Well, let's dive into the video and break down all that there was to take away from the latest episodes. Here is Cobra Kai Season 6 Part 2 Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. History repeated itself with Qual's death. One of the main things that's been underpinning this season of the show is the fact that Mr. Miyagi wasn't the person that Daniel LaRusso thought that he was. And the plot got even thicker in the finale, where we found out that when Mr. Miyagi fought in the Seikai Taikai competition several decades ago and won it, his opponent ended up being killed by him in the fight. Something that was put down to the fact that times were different back then and that the occasional death did occur. The moment that this line was spoken, it felt like there was always going to be a death that occurred within this episode, and obviously we saw history repeating itself. This was with the death of Qual from Cobra Kai. Cobra Kai were eliminated by Miyagi-Do in the quarterfinals, however, due to doping taking place with the Russian team. Cobra Kai were given a spot back in the Tournament of Champions because they had the next highest points. This is where the large-scale fight that took place ended up occurring. During Rex and Robbie's fight, the Russian coach launched an attack on the umpire, and from there a riot broke out and all of the different dojos that people were fighting under were going against one another. Qual had this alpha male mindset where he didn't like losing, but he ultimately faced a loss when we saw him getting defeated by Robbie in the quarterfinals. This was something that didn't sit well with him, and then when facing off against Rex in the large-scale brawl, the toughest person that had been fighting in the competition, Qual knew that he wouldn't be able to beat him. Earlier on in the episode, Kim said about how winning was always the most important thing and that it came above all else and that it's shameful to not win. This is a mentality that Cobra Kai and Kim had ingrained into its fighters, so winning at whatever cost, even if it meant cheating, it would still be a personal victory. That's why Qual picked up Cleese's knife, which he dropped, and planned on killing Rex. However, it obviously didn't go as planned. Qual ended up being kicked and falling onto the blade, meaning that he ended up doing it to himself. Qual was now dead, and with everybody gathered round the mat, you could see that they all thought that what had happened had gone too far. I think people may believe that Rex was responsible for the stabbing of Qual, as he was the person that he was fighting. Daniel LaRusso saw that Qual had the blade, but I'm thinking in terms of the story, Silver's side will be weakened if Rex is taken away by the police, as otherwise it doesn't feel like there's a chance that any other team will win. He's like the Terminator. So I think Rex is going to get blamed for the murder of Qual even though he didn't do it. However, Qual was seen on camera on the live feed, so maybe when that gets assessed, Rex will be let off, but it may be too late by then. This is something that will ultimately weaken Silver's eye in Dragons, and the fight will become a lot more level as the groups replay the semi-finals. I do also wonder if the competition will be postponed for the time being. That's something that could well be the case, and then once it's all been dealt with, it'll pick back up in the rounds that were remaining. The division amongst the fighters. Division was the very thing that was present within this season of the show. We saw it with Johnny Lawrence and Daniel LaRusso, Hawk and Dimitri, Miguel and Robbie, and also Sam and Tori. But what this season was about was the group looking for ways that they could work through the division that was present and progress their relationships to a better state. A state where they could eventually get through the tournament, and that's exactly what we saw happening. Right at the start of the episodes, Miyagi-Do were crumbling because, at the core, Johnny and Daniel were at conflict, but also Captain Robbie was distracted because Tori was fighting for Cobra Kai. He was costing them rounds and it was infuriating Miguel because he felt as though he should have been captain. Right at the end, we saw that Sam stuck up for Tori in the brawl and also Robbie did too, which to me showed that the division and rivalry that was once there was no longer present between both sides. This could potentially lead to Tori not wanting to fight under Cobra Kai anymore. Kim said how karate and winning was worth costing her the life that she could have had with her family and missing out on relationships. But you could tell that she didn't mean it, and I don't think Tori is going to make that mistake. The return of Terry Silver. One massive moment that occurred during these few episodes was that Terry Silver ended up returning. I swear every character has immunity from pretty much everything in the show, other than Qual. Just like how John Kreese had managed to avoid the authorities, Terry Silver had his charges dropped from the end of Season 5 and was able to set up a new dojo which Sensei Wolf was leading with the Iron Dragons. John Kreese and Terry Silver were having a fight at the end of the final episode, and as Silver was about to deliver a fatal blow to Kreese, Johnny Lawrence intervened and prevented it from happening. This was because Kreese's enemy was also Johnny Lawrence's enemy, and he knew that by working together in this instance, both of their problems would have been halved. Plus, Johnny also couldn't turn down a fight with Silver. It's a classic at this point. Silver is essentially there to disrupt as he usually does, but I think we will see him getting taken down in the next batch of episodes. My review of the season. I thought part 2 of this season was really strong. It flew by, but it was really enjoyable. Don't get me wrong, the story and narrative is quite predictable, and some of the lines of dialogue are a bit cheesy, but I definitely didn't see Chozen and Kim hooking up. That was actually the most unexpected moment in the season, don't you think? I thought the theme of division on all fronts, and then the likes of Miyagi-Do being the one team that was able to put aside their differences and thrive, was a theme that was worth exploring, and it worked really well. This is because it allowed us to connect with the characters even more and spend a bit more time with them one-on-one, rather than in a larger scale group. One thing I don't quite get about this season is why Daniel LaRusso cares so much about Mr. Miyagi's past. Daniel LaRusso is almost heartbroken at the fact that Mr. Miyagi had a past before he knew him, and he feels betrayed by it. I just don't understand why he's hurt. People have pasts, and you can clearly see that the fact that he ended up killing somebody when he fought in the competition is what made him change his approach, and probably the reason as to why he wanted to forget about that life that he led before. It was quite refreshing seeing these episodes in Barcelona and having the group being around completely new characters. We saw different interactions and dynamics which ultimately led to even more feuds, such as Tori and Zara, and feuds like that made the final fight scene at the end of the final episode feel all the more justified. That fight scene at the end was really entertaining to watch unfold. Choreographing that scene must have taken so much time, but it definitely paid off because it was probably the best fight scene that the show's produced. Moments such as Daniel LaRusso standing by Johnny, Hawk and Dimitri bouncing off of one another in the fight showing that they'd made up, Robbie and Tori standing by one another, and also Chozen and Kim working together. Even though it was a complete mess and there was chaos everywhere, through that chaos clarity was formed and we saw relationships being repaired. I can't believe we've got to wait until the 13th of November until we get the final 5 episodes that the show has to offer. Netflix is definitely dragging this final season out, but with it being one of their biggest shows, I can kind of understand why. I'm really intrigued to see how the show is going to end, and if the tournament is going to be postponed due to the death of Qual. The final 5 episodes are definitely going to be exciting. So, there you have it, Cobra Kai Season 6 Part 2 Ending Explained.